Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. What can we talk about? Well, let me see, the subject that seems to be quite hot at the moment is on the subject of whether a vlogger, I always find it difficult to say vlogger, so blogger, whether they do things for views. Now, this among some of the purest subscribers go, oh, no, he's doing that just for the views. Let me give you a few facts of life on how a blogger works. They work on views, right? So if a vlogger is not getting any views, guess what? He's not really a vlogger, is he? Because it means that nobody's watching what he does. So YouTube, anybody can set up a channel. You can set up a channel called Joe Soap, leads the world, changing the world one view at a time, and you can put that up as your site or your channel. Now, then you will be required to meet certain standards, and as far as I know, unless it has been changed behind my back, and YouTube do things without me knowing, I'll have you know, you have to have 4,000 watch hours. So somewhere you need to have generated enough interest to have people watch you and give you views spanned over 4,000 hours. Okay? Now, you also need to have 1,000 subs, and there are some other things that you need about even after you've been monetized. You have to meet other certain requirements before they'll start upgrading you. Right, but anyway, after you've had 4,000 watch hours watched, and you've reached 1,000 subscribers, in other 1,000 people out there who are willing to spend some of their valuable time watching what you think is interesting. Now, how do you know that it's interesting? Now, this is really interesting. I'm getting tied up with my words here. What you need is, you need to cover subjects which actually people want to watch a video on, because a lot of the time people have incredibly short span of attention. So if you haven't got them in the first minute or two, first moment or two it seems, then you've had it. They're just going to have gone on to the next thing. Now, at one time, if I can just give you an example, at one time in a movie, what used to happen was you used to go in there and then you'd sit and you'd talk amongst yourselves while they were running the titles. And the titles would come on and it would have every single one of 1,000, it seems, jobs that have to be filled in order to make a movie. And then it will have something that leads you in gradually into the subject of the movie. And that would go on, and this would be so laborious at one time that, in fact, you could quite safely miss the first 10 minutes of a movie and have not missed anything at all, because finally the title would come up, and then you'd know what the hell you were in there to watch anyway. So that's how it used to be. And then, as far as I know, it was Steven Spielberg that changed that, and he came in, and instead of taking the material that it would need to make one movie, he took the material that you could make 2 or 3 movies about, and he would spend it all in the first 10 minutes before you even saw a title. So you would go to see Indiana Jones, and you see Indiana Jones, and it would open slap in your face. You'd be back in your seat like this, and you would see him running through the jungle, sliding on his rear end down these slippy slopes in the Amazon with a huge crowd of of headhunters following him with those blowpipes that have deadly poison that paralyze you from the neck down as soon as they hit you, and then they take your head, and all of this, and you know all of this is going to happen, and old Indiana is running, and he does all of this without losing his hat. And then finally, when you think, what the heck is going to happen next, he slides down the slope and hits onto the boat, which is going to take him to freedom. And it's one of those it's a flying boat plane, and it takes off, and it takes off with him hanging on to the rudders, and the natives all chanting and everything, and blowing in their blowpipes and hitting him in the pants, which are lead lined or something like that, and that would be before the movie started. So Steven Spielberg, to my mind, he changed all of that. Normally people would get, well, we've got enough here to do the first 3 scenes, let's make a whole movie out of it by stretching it. Well, we can waste 10 minutes on the titles, can't we? And Steven Spielberg just blew all of that out of the water, and you got an incredible 10-minute adrenaline rush in which, my God, you said, oh, that's great. I'm glad I'm going to finally get to pop a piece of popcorn in my mouth. So it's a matter of grabbing the attention, and the way that you do that is by something that you believe in. If you're a vlogger and you're going to amount to anything, so you've got to pull it all out of the bag in the first 4,000 hours, and with only 1,000 subscribers. And how are you going to get those people to tell their friends about it? Oh, you've got to watch this. Now, how do you guess what's going to ignite the imagination of the people that happen to go onto your channel? Now, in the beginning, not many people happen to go on your channel, because it's very difficult in the first place, before you finally get your direction and your focus. It's difficult to decide what you want to be categorized in, because as in our case, we were filming ordinary life, about life in the Philippines, but we were not a travel channel, because we couldn't afford to go to 5-star resorts and have a $10,000 or whatever they cost drone flying overhead on a sleepy lagoon with a fabulous hard body girl in a very, very soft body bikini lying on the water. And that wasn't going to be ours. We were going to we were going to talk about chickens pooping in the laundry basket and stuff like that. We never thought we'd get a single view, and we just did it for the fun at first. Right, but let's look at what happened. And now, here we are, and as someone said, the SHIT has hit the fan on Beth's channel, because she's doing videos about love stories. Here's the thing, this is the closest that I can think of at the moment, without actually being in a reality show. This is the closest you can get without actually being in a reality show. It's not a reality show, it's just about real life. So, does everybody sail off into the sunset as happy as can be? Does everybody get their happy ever after? Do they all meet the one? No. Sometimes life goes horribly wrong. Now, what do? Do we, in that particular case, do we just say, oh, just don't mention it again? So there we are. We've been doing romantic, sitting in the sunset on the side of a hill, and Alfred and the love story of Alfred and And we've been doing all of that, and then it kind of starts to go wrong. So we just sort of say, oh, just sweep it under the carpet and just don't mention it. And when anybody says, whatever happened to Alfred? You say, Alfred who? That's not going to it's not going to work, is it? So you got to meet the bad stuff with the good. And you still got to, in our particular case, you still have to try to make it into a good, feel-good channel. Well, even on a feel-good channel, sometimes things don't work out quite to plan. And that's what's been happening. But it's one of those things of, if everything's going great, well, it's all going great, isn't it? But then, if it doesn't go great, then it's really not going great. So what do? You still continue to do what you believe in. Now, some of the things, let me tell you a couple of things from our history, okay, which we never thought would be of any interest at all to anyone. We had Beth trying to encourage me to eat something out of one of those shellfish. And as I said back then, it looks like it came out of somebody's nose. It looks like a piece of snot, and you're not going to get me to eat it. Now, this produced a focus of interest that you wouldn't believe. Just that, because Beth titled it something like brutal Filipina wife forces husband to eat, I don't know, snotty shellfish, or something like that. So, I'm thinking, who would be interested in this? I mean, it's just us around a very primitive table in a very primitive house of Nanai's, which she's been living in for some 50 years. Concrete floors, tin roof. Who's going to be interested in that when they could so easily nip over and watch this beautiful girl that's almost wearing a tiny bikini? Who's going to do it? Well, surely nobody. How many views? I'm looking here. 2.2 million views. That means that 2.2 million subscribers at some point, or non-subscribers at some point or another, looked at that video and either found it, as a lot did, terrible, or I think it's absolutely awful that you're forcing your husband to try to live on that kind of stuff. And then there were others who said, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Somebody even said, my favourite is the one about the snot out of the shellfish. That's my favourite video. Who could have predicted? Do you think that we sat down and said, right, okay, here's the master plan. We'll pull that particular video that we've got all lined up about you trying to make me eat a piece of snot, and it's going to get 2.2 million. It's a snap. We didn't think that. We never thought about that at all. What's another one? Then, as there was, if you might remember, there was a particular video that Beth fished out of the closet, a load of shirts that I had not worn for many months, if ever, and she put them into a parcel, and then she called me out of the house and said, we've got a balikbayan box, it's a small one, would you like to come and open it? And then I looked through it, I didn't recognise the thing, and she said, it's a prank, gotcha. And that got a lot of views, and everybody thought that was very funny. Now, Beth's next prank was, we're driving along our rough dirt road, and she said, why don't you throw me out of the truck because I'm not paying attention, and and make me walk. I said, I don't think that's a terrible idea. And I hated it. I really hated that. Up to then I'd been trying to convince everybody that I'm a fairly nice person. And here I am now throwing my little wife out of and I have to act the part. And so does she. Well, she acted it too well. And there am I, leaving her behind. And every time she gets a little bit close, I accelerated a bit more and left her a little bit more behind. And then finally, when she got in, instead of me saying, "God, you pranked," and everybody's happy, she was angry with me. So everybody was unconvinced that it was a prank. And now I tell you, I got almost death threats in that. If I had a gun, I'd put a bullet in you, somebody said. I tried to convince Beth we should take that down. I really don't like it. I got tired of dealing with comments that said what an absolute a-hole I was. And I'm saying, excuse me, can you put the gun away? It was a joke. Yeah, right. That's what they were saying. And I actually deleted quite a few people. I hid them so they would never show on our channel again. She wouldn't take it down. Well, it's getting 250,000 views. So why don't we leave it up? What's another one? What about when we started to do advice and people started writing in with their problems, really? And one lady, get the first one right. One guy wrote in and said, "My wife is very noisy in bed when we're doing the deed. What can I do about that?" Well, people, it ignited the imagination. You know, well, you can turn the radio up. What about some duct tape on her mouth and all kinds of rather unromantic solutions? How many views did that one get? Who could have guessed this one? 2.1 million views. About a woman who likes to make a lot of noise when she's being pleasured. What's another one? Beth asked the question, or answered the question, and we did have this, is $500 enough to live on in the Philippines? So in other words, if you're coming here and you're retired, can you live on $500 pension? And she answered that. How many? 1 million views. 1 million. Now, another one. The scares. This one is from a lady, and coming up soon, if that's not, and that's not a play on words, but coming up soon was a fiance, an expat, and she was a lady who had not had any experience in receiving, and wanted to know what she would do, because she'd been hearing all kinds of rumours about expats coming along here, and they were endowed like elephants. So she's a little bit worried, because she's saying, you know, I'm only 4'11", so how am I going to manage Jumbo? Well, how many did that have? 660,000 views. Now, what's the idea behind all of this? Is that if you do what you believe in, you sink or swim according to that. Now, some may like everything that you do, some may like nothing that you do and don't come back. or they just stay to criticize, and there are plenty of those. And then there are some that like some things, and some of the other things they don't like. And a lot of people think that it's very easy to make these kinds of choices. I remember a very famous woman, Jacqueline Suzanne. Jacqueline Suzanne was the sister, the slightly less famous sister of Joan Collins, who became very famous for one of the soap operas. I think it was called Dallas. And she was she was the super bitch in that, you know, the one that everybody loved to hate. So Jacqueline Suzanne was being interviewed, and Jacqueline Suzanne wrote best-selling books. She brought a book out, it would be a bestseller. Now, they were not triumphs of literary beauty. They were adventure come action come romance in story form, and they were interesting stories. I read a couple of Jacqueline Suzanne's books. Now, when she was being interviewed, the interviewer, and let's face it, any interviewer doing his stuff will ask questions which have been levelled at that person that's being interviewed and never been answered. So he said, what do you say to people who criticise your books as being shallow and of the kind of quality that, well, the accusation is, or suggestion is, that anybody could write one of those romantic novels that you write? And Jacqueline Suzanne said, let them. And I know this from my experience as a musician. As a musician, musicians often would say, what a piece of crap that is, you know, I mean, that pop song. And we always used to get into discussions about pop songs, because pop songs were light, they were lightweight. As I've said before, you know, Tie a Yellow Ribbon, or a story like the green grass of home, and storylines like that. Surely anybody could write that, because I mean, it's not a wonderful melody, it's not terrific lyrics, and it doesn't require any great skill to sing it, and yet it became a hit. Why? It's one of those things that, like our million views, it's almost, you can't, it's perhaps what people are going for is whether it's authentic, whether it's just set up, or whether it's something that you made happen and some chemistry happened in that little moment. Many musicians who were far greater musicians than, say, the person who wrote Tie a Yellow Ribbon, but they didn't write a song that was equal in success to Tie a Yellow Ribbon, which people around the world are still singing. So, brings us to the question, do we do things for views? Damn right we do. Of course we do. If we don't think that something will get views, even if it's dear to our hearts, I might just want to do something about crocheting baby boots, because it was something that my mother did, and we put it up and nobody looks at it. We get 3.5 views. Well, we'll count that as a failure, even if it was a real jewel of a video. Because in order to be a success, in order to keep increasing our subscribership, we need to do things which people view. Hence the word views. I hope this explains some of the motives behind any vloggers. Oh, there, I managed to say it, a vlogger. Vloggers seek views. After you've got your 4,000 watch hours in and your 1,000 subs, YouTube will come in and they will review your channel, and if you're lucky, they will monetize it, and from that moment you will get astronomical figures. Your bank will swell by the centavo, as sometimes, for all the hard work that you may have done, you might make $1. Now, in our case, in the Philippines, because the exchange rate is so good from the dollar to the pesos, what would be a pittance in the America, we're doing okay on that here because we're in pesos. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to, oh no, you can't comment, can you? They still haven't got their act together. Bye for now. You can still share and you can still subscribe, and the subscription doesn't cost anything. It's one of those strange words that they've decided to adopt that doesn't really mean what they're saying. Perhaps they're doing it for the views. Bye for now.